He paid every nanny $10,000 a week just to watch them fail, because his daughter hadn't spoken a single word since her mother died. Outside, New York glowed under falling snow, Christmas lights wrapping every street in warmth. Carolers sang, families laughed. The world felt soft, hopeful, like miracles were still possible. But inside Daniel Whitmore's penthouse, there was only silence. At 42, Daniel was everything people admired: wealthy, powerful, untouchable. A tech CEO who controlled billion-dollar deals without emotion. And now, a father who no longer knew how to reach his own child. 7-year-old Lily stood by the window, small and still, staring out at the lights she no longer cared about. She didn't speak, she didn't cry, she didn't react. Not to the decorations, not to the music, not even to him. Since his wife died a year ago, Lily had shut down completely, and every nanny he hired had walked away within days. Some said she was too broken, others said the house felt wrong. Daniel paid them all anyway, because to him, people always stayed for money, until they didn't. Tonight, another nanny arrived. He didn't read her file. He didn't need to. She would fail like the rest. But when the elevator doors opened and the black nanny stepped inside, she didn't look at him. She looked at Lily, and instead of asking about her salary, she asked one simple question: "What do you like?" Daniel Whitmore didn't believe in second chances. Not in business, not in people, and certainly not in himself. A year ago, everything in his life had still made sense. His wife, Eleanor, had been the only person who could quiet the constant noise in his head. The deals, the risks, the pressure of building an empire that never slept. She had a way of slowing time, of making even his coldest decisions feel human. And Lily had been different then. She used to laugh loudly, run barefoot across the marble floors, tugging at his sleeve to show him drawings he never had time to finish looking at. She used to sing along to Christmas songs long before December even came. Back then, Daniel believed control was enough to keep everything safe, until the night he lost it. It had been raining. Not snow rain. Cold, sharp, relentless. The kind that blurred the city lights and made everything harder to see. Daniel had been on a call in the back seat, arguing over a deal that couldn't wait. Eleanor was driving. Lily sat in the back, humming softly to herself. He remembered that part clearly. The humming. He didn't remember the exact moment it happened. Just the sound. Metal crushing. Glass shattering. A silence so violent it felt unreal. When Daniel opened his eyes, the world had already changed. Eleanor never made it out of the car. Lily did. But something inside her didn't. She stopped speaking that night. At first, the doctors called it shock. Then trauma. Then something more permanent. Selective mutism, they said. As if giving it a name made it easier to accept. Daniel tried everything. The best specialists. The most expensive therapies. Private tutors. Child psychologists. Flown in from across the country. Nothing worked. Lily didn't respond to questions. Didn't react to affection. Didn't even cry. It was as if she had locked herself somewhere deep inside and thrown away the key. And Daniel, he buried himself in work. Because work was the only place where things still followed rules. Where problems had solutions. Where effort guaranteed results. Unlike people, unlike love. Unlike the fragile, uncontrollable reality of losing someone you thought you could protect, that was when the nannies started coming. One after another. Carefully selected. Highly trained. Perfect on paper. They all tried. Some were gentle. Some were persistent. Some were overly cheerful, filling the penthouse with forced warmth that only made the silence feel heavier. Lily rejected them all. Not with anger, but with nothing. No eye contact. No reaction. No acknowledgement. And that kind of silence broke people faster than any tantrum ever could. The first nanny lasted 5 days. The second, 3. The third didn't even make it through the weekend. By the 11th, Daniel had stopped pretending it mattered. He doubled their salaries. Tripled, even. Not because he believed it would help Lily, but because it confirmed something he had already decided was true. Everyone had a price, and when they reached it, they left. That belief became his shield. If people only stayed for money, then losing them wouldn't hurt. Not again. Meanwhile, Lily remained exactly the same. Still, silent, untouchable, except there were moments. Small ones, easy to miss, like the way her fingers lingered on an old scarf that used to belong to Eleanor, or how she would pause just for a second when a familiar Christmas melody played somewhere in the distance. Daniel noticed those moments. He just didn't know what to do with them, so he ignored them. It was easier that way. Easier than admitting that somewhere beneath all that silence, his daughter might still be there, waiting. And then came the woman who didn't ask about money, the one who didn't try to impress him, the one who looked at Lily like she wasn't broken. That night, long after the house had gone quiet, Daniel stood alone in his office, replaying the scene in his mind. The way Lily hadn't walked away, the way she had stayed. It was the first time in months something had shifted, and Daniel didn't trust it, because hope was dangerous. Still, one question refused to leave him. If every nanny before her had failed, why did this one feel like she already knew something he didn't? The next morning, nothing dramatic happened. No sudden breakthrough, no miracle, no words. And yet, something was different. Lily didn't avoid her. That alone set her apart from every nanny before. The woman whose name Daniel had barely bothered to remember the night before moved through the penthouse quietly, without trying to fill the silence. She didn't ask Lily questions she knew wouldn't be answered. She didn't force smiles or exaggerated cheer. Instead, she simply existed, near her. In the kitchen, she hummed softly while preparing breakfast, not loudly, not for attention. Just enough that the sound drifted naturally through the space. A Christmas hymn, familiar, gentle. Lily sat at the table, unmoving at first. Her eyes stayed down, fixed on nothing in particular, but her fingers tapped lightly against the surface. Once, twice, then stilled again. The woman didn't react. She didn't turn around. She just kept humming. Daniel watched all of this from the doorway, unnoticed. He had seen specialists try everything: structured therapy, behavioral triggers, carefully designed interactions. None of them had ever waited. Later that afternoon, the woman found Lily sitting on the floor near the large Christmas tree, a box of untouched ornaments beside her. The tree itself was perfect, professionally decorated, symmetrical, expensive, and completely lifeless. The woman crouched down beside the box, picking up a small, uneven ornament, a handmade one. Slightly crooked, painted by a child's hand. She studied it for a moment. Then, without asking permission, she hung it on the tree. Not in the center, not where it belonged, just somewhere real. Lily's eyes shifted. A small movement, barely noticeable. But Daniel saw it again from across the room. The woman picked up another ornament. This one brighter. Messier. She turned it in her fingers, then glanced briefly toward Lily. Still no words. But this time, she spoke anyway. Do you think this one goes higher or lower? Silence. A long one. Daniel felt the familiar tension building the moment where people usually tried harder, spoke louder, pushed too far, but she didn't. She simply waited, and then she placed it slightly too low on purpose. Not perfectly, not correctly, just wrong enough to matter. Lily's gaze stayed fixed on it. Seconds passed. Then, slowly, almost hesitantly, Lily reached out. Her small fingers adjusted the ornament, just a little higher. Then she pulled her hand back quickly, like she had done something she wasn't supposed to. The woman didn't react, didn't praise her, didn't even look directly at her. She just nodded softly, as if to herself. Yeah, she murmured. That looks better. Daniel's chest tightened slightly. It was nothing. A tiny movement. Insignificant. And yet, it was more than anyone had gotten in months. That evening, something else happened. Lily didn't leave the room when the woman sat down on the couch. She stayed. Not close, but not far either. The distance between them, smaller than before. The woman reached into her bag and pulled out a small, worn book. Not new, not impressive. The edges were soft, pages slightly bent from use. She opened it and began to read quietly. A simple Christmas story. Her voice was calm, steady, not performative, not overly animated, just real. Lily didn't look at her at first, but when the woman turned a page, Lily's eyes flickered, then again, and again, until, slowly, almost unconsciously, she was listening. Across the room, Daniel stood frozen. He didn't interrupt, didn't step forward, didn't say a word, because for the first time in over a year, he felt something unfamiliar. Not control, not certainty, something quieter, more fragile, hope, and he hated it. Because hope meant risk. Hope meant believing something could change, and being wrong again. Still, as he watched his daughter remain in that room, closer, calmer, more present than she had been in months, he couldn't ignore the truth anymore. This wasn't luck. This wasn't coincidence. This woman wasn't trying to fix Lily. She was reaching her, and that made her more dangerous than anyone who came before. Because, if she succeeded, Daniel would have to face something he had avoided for a very long time. The possibility that his daughter hadn't disappeared, that she had just been waiting for someone who knew how to find her. By the third day, the house no longer felt the same. It wasn't louder, it wasn't brighter, but something invisible had shifted, like the air itself had softened, just enough to make the silence feel less suffocating. Daniel noticed it immediately, and he didn't trust it. At breakfast, Lily sat at the table as usual, quiet, distant, but this time, when the woman placed a small plate in front of her, toast cut unevenly, slightly imperfect, Lily didn't push it away. She touched it. Then, slowly, she ate. Across the room, Daniel lowered his coffee cup just slightly. Another small change. Another detail that shouldn't have mattered. But it did. And that made it dangerous. Later that morning, Daniel called his assistant. "I want a full background check," he said flatly. "Everything. I don't care how clean it looks. Dig deeper." There was a pause on the other end. "Sir, the agency already vetted." "I didn't ask what they did," Daniel cut in. "I want to know what they missed. Because there had to be something. There was always something. No one walked into his world without wanting something in return. No one stayed without a reason. Especially not someone who refused $10,000 a week like it meant nothing." That afternoon, 2 of Daniel's business associates arrived unannounced. Marcus and Elaine, old friends, if that word still meant anything in Daniel's world. Wealthy, polished, always smiling just enough to hide their calculations. They stepped into the penthouse with the kind of ease that came from knowing they belonged in places like this. Marcus glanced around. "Still feels like a museum in here," he said lightly. Elaine's eyes moved more carefully, taking in details, noticing what didn't belong. And then she saw her. The nanny sat on the floor near the window. A small box of crayons opened beside her. Lily sat across from her, not drawing but watching, closely. "Is that the new one?" Elaine asked, her voice low. Daniel didn't answer immediately. "Yes." Elaine tilted her head slightly. "She doesn't look like she's trying very hard. That's what concerns me." Marcus chuckled. "Or maybe she's just smarter than the others. Knows how to play it slow." Daniel's jaw tightened slightly, because that possibility had already crossed his mind. Across the room, the woman picked up a crayon and began drawing on a blank sheet of paper. Not something impressive, just simple lines. A house, crooked, uneven, childlike. She didn't hand it to Lily. She just placed it between them and waited. Lily's eyes dropped to the paper, then lifted, then dropped again. Elaine watched carefully. "You're letting her get close." Daniel's voice was calm. "I'm letting her try," Marcus smirked. "And when she fails?" Daniel didn't hesitate. "She leaves, like the rest." But even as he said it, something in his tone lacked conviction. Elaine noticed. She always did. "You're testing her," she said quietly. Daniel didn't deny it. Of course he was. That evening, He decided to stop observing and start pushing. He found her in the kitchen, washing dishes slowly, methodically, like she had all the time in the world. "You're not doing your job," Daniel said without preamble. She didn't turn around immediately. "I am." "No," he replied coldly. "You're sitting on the floor, drawing pictures, humming songs." She dried her hands and faced him. "Your daughter is responding." "Barely." "It's a start." Daniel stepped closer, his presence sharp, controlled. "I didn't hire you for a start. I hired you to fix the problem." Something flickered in her eyes. Not anger, not fear, something steadier. "She's not a problem," she said. The words landed harder than Daniel expected. He didn't show it. Instead, he reached into his pocket and pulled out a check. He wrote a number quickly, ripped it free, held it out to her. "Take it." She didn't move. "That's more than what we agreed on," he continued. "Consider it a bonus. You can leave tonight." Silence. The kind that stretched just long enough to feel deliberate. Finally, she spoke. "I'm not leaving." Daniel's expression hardened. "Everyone leaves. Not if there's a reason to stay." His voice dropped. "And what's your reason?" She held his gaze. For her, no hesitation, no performance, just truth. Daniel studied her carefully. Then, without warning, he shifted, his voice colder now, sharper. "You think you're different?" he said. "You think you can walk in here and do what no one else could?" She didn't answer. "You're not the first person to try," he continued. "And you won't be the last." Still nothing. That irritated him more than anything. "Or maybe," he added, his tone cutting, "you're just better at pretending." A pause. This time, something did change in her expression. Not hurt. Not defensiveness. Understanding. And that unsettled him. "You've already decided who I am," she said quietly. "So nothing I say will matter." Daniel didn't respond. Because she was right. And he hated that. From the hallway, unnoticed, Lily stood watching. Her small fingers curled tightly around the edge of the wall. Her eyes moved between them faster than before, more aware. Something was building. Something fragile. And Daniel, without realizing it, was about to break it. The silence that followed didn't break immediately. It stretched, tight, fragile, like something invisible had been pulled too far and was seconds away from snapping. Lily stood in the hallway, her small body half hidden behind the wall, her fingers gripping the edge so tightly her knuckles had turned pale. She had seen everything, not fully understood it, but felt it, the tension, the distance, the shift. And for the first time in a long time, something inside her moved fast enough to hurt. Back in the kitchen, Daniel still held the check in his hand. Untouched, unaccepted, rejected. It wasn't the money that bothered him. It was what it meant. He had built his entire world on the idea that everything and everyone had a price. And now, standing in front of him, was someone quietly refusing to fit into that world. "You'll regret staying," Daniel said finally, his voice low, controlled. The woman didn't respond right away. She simply reached for a towel, dried her hands again, even though they were already dry. A small delay. A choice, not to react. "I'm not here for you," she said. That landed harder than anything else she could have said. Daniel's jaw tightened. Before he could respond, a sound. Soft, unsteady. From the hallway, both of them turned. Lily. She stepped forward slowly, as if unsure her own body would follow through. Her eyes weren't empty anymore. They were wide, shaken, searching. The woman's posture softened immediately. She didn't rush toward her, didn't call her name. She just lowered herself slightly, making space, not pressure. Lily took another step, then another, her breathing uneven now, chest rising too fast, too shallow. Daniel frowned slightly. "Lily," but the woman lifted her hand, just slightly, not stopping him, just asking him to wait. For once, he did. Lily's gaze flickered between them. Her father, the woman, back and forth, faster. Something inside her was breaking through, but it wasn't clean. It wasn't gentle. It was messy, painful, real. And then, she moved. Not away. Forward. Straight toward the woman. Her small hand reached out, not confidently, not fully, but enough. Enough to mean something. The woman met her halfway. Not grabbing, not pulling, just letting Lily's hand find hers. And the moment it did, Lily's control shattered. Her body trembled. Her breath hitched. And suddenly, sound. A broken one. Unformed. But unmistakable. Daniel froze. He hadn't heard his daughter make a sound in over a year. Not a word. Not even a cry. And now, this. Lily clutched tighter, her fingers digging into the woman's sleeve like she was holding on to something she was terrified to lose. Her mouth opened, closed, opened again, fighting, pushing, like the word itself was buried too deep. Daniel stepped forward instinctively. Lily, this time. The woman didn't stop him, but Lily didn't look at him. She couldn't. All her focus, everything she had was locked onto the woman in front of her. And then, finally, the word came. Small, cracked, barely there. Mommy. The room stopped. Completely. The sound didn't echo. It didn't need to, because it landed exactly where it needed to. Daniel's breath caught. For a second, he didn't understand what he had just heard. Not fully, because it didn't make sense. It couldn't. But Lily said it again. Softer this time. More fragile. Mommy, don't go. The woman's eyes closed briefly. Just a second. Like she felt the weight of it. Like she understood exactly what that word meant. And what it didn't. When she opened them again, they were steady. Gentle. She didn't correct Lily. Didn't pull away. She simply placed her hand over Lily's firm, grounding. I'm not going anywhere right now, she said quietly. Not a promise. Not forever. Just truth. And for Lily, that was enough. Across the room, Daniel felt something inside him collapse. Not slowly, not carefully, all at once. Because in that single moment, everything he had believed, everything he had built to protect himself, was exposed. His daughter wasn't unreachable. She wasn't broken beyond repair. She had been waiting for something he hadn't been able to give her. Something he didn't even understand anymore. And someone else. Daniel took another step forward. Slower this time. Careful, like approaching something fragile. Lily, he said again. His voice quieter now. Different. Lily didn't respond. Not to him. Not yet. She stayed where she was holding on, breathing unevenly, but present in a way she hadn't been in over a year. And Daniel realized something that hit harder than anything else that night. She didn't come back for him. She came back for her. For the woman he had just tried to push away. The one he had tested, doubted, nearly lost. Daniel looked at her. Really looked this time. Not as an employee, not as a risk, but as the person standing between him and everything he thought he had already lost. And for the first time since the accident, he didn't feel in control. He felt afraid. Afraid that it might be too late. Afraid that even now, he didn't know how to fix what he had broken. The woman met his gaze. Not accusing. Not triumphant. Just aware. You don't have to fix everything at once, she said softly. Daniel didn't answer, because he didn't know how. And for the first time, in a long time, he wasn't sure he had the answers anymore. All he knew was this. The one person he thought didn't matter was the reason everything had just changed. And if she walked away now, he wouldn't just lose her. He would lose his daughter all over again. Christmas Eve arrived quietly. Not with noise or celebration, but with something softer. Something that had been missing from the penthouse for a very long time. Warmth. It wasn't obvious at first. The city outside still glittered the same way. Lights stretching across the skyline. Snow falling in slow, steady patterns. Distant laughter echoing from streets far below. But inside, things had changed. The tree in the living room no longer looked perfect. Some ornaments hung unevenly. Others didn't match. A few had clearly been placed by small, careful hands. And for the first time, it felt alive. Lily sat on the floor near the tree, a blanket wrapped loosely around her shoulders. A coloring book rested in her lap, her fingers moving slowly, deliberately filling in shapes that didn't need to be perfect. She paused every now and then. Not lost, just thinking. Present. Across the room, Daniel stood watching her, not from a distance this time. Not hidden behind glass or silence. Closer. Still unsure, but trying. It had been 3 days since that night. 3 days since he heard her voice. She hadn't spoken much since. Only small words. Quiet ones. But each one mattered. Each one felt like something being rebuilt, piece by piece. And Daniel didn't rush it. For once, he didn't try to control the outcome. He had learned something in those 3 days. Something simple and painfully obvious. Lily didn't need to be fixed. She needed to feel safe. A soft sound pulled his attention. From the kitchen. He walked in slowly. She was there. The woman who had changed everything standing at the counter, carefully placing cookies onto a tray. The scent of cinnamon and sugar filled the space, warm and familiar. She glanced up when he entered. For a moment, neither of them spoke. Then Daniel took a breath. I was wrong. The words felt unfamiliar. Heavy, but real. She didn't respond right away. Just listened. I thought, he continued, slower now. If I could control everything, nothing would break again. A pause. But I was wrong about that too. Silence settled between them, but not the kind that pushed people apart. The kind that allowed something new to exist. I don't know how to do this, Daniel admitted quietly. That was the truth. Not the version of him the world saw. Not the man who had answers for everything. Just a father who had lost his way. The woman studied him for a moment. Then she nodded slightly. You don't have to know everything, she said. You just have to stay. Simple, but it landed deeper than anything else she had said before. Stay. Daniel looked down briefly, absorbing it. Then, a small voice. Behind him, Dad. He turned instantly. Lily stood at the edge of the room, her blanket slipping slightly from her shoulders. Her eyes met his. Not distant, not empty. There was hesitation there, uncertainty, but also something else. Trust, fragile, but real. Daniel didn't move too quickly, didn't rush toward her. He remembered. So instead, he lowered himself slightly, bringing himself to her level. I'm here, he said softly. Lily took a small step forward, then another. Slow, careful, until she was close enough to reach him. She didn't hug him immediately. She just stood there for a second, as if making sure he wouldn't disappear. Then, her arms wrapped around him, tight, stronger than he expected. Daniel froze for a brief moment. Then, gently, he held her back. Not perfectly, not confidently, but enough to matter. Behind them, the woman watched quietly. No interruption, no need to step in, because this moment was theirs. After a while, Lily pulled back slightly, her small hand still gripping his sleeve. Her voice was soft, barely above a whisper. Stay. Daniel swallowed. I will. This time, he meant it. Later that night, the three of them sat together, in the living room. No grand celebration, no perfect scene, just a quiet Christmas Eve. Lily leaned against the woman, her head resting lightly against her arm. Not because she needed to choose, but because she didn't have to anymore. Daniel watched them both, and for the first time in over a year, he didn't feel like something was missing. He felt like something had been found. Outside, snow continued to fall. Inside, the lights on the tree flickered softly, reflecting in Lily's eyes as she looked up calm, safe, whole in a way she hadn't been in a long time. Daniel leaned back slightly, exhaling a breath he hadn't realized he'd been holding. We'll figure it out, he said quietly, not to anyone in particular, just aloud. And this time, he believed it, because healing didn't happen all at once. It didn't come from control, or money, or perfect solutions. It came from small moments, from staying, from choosing, again and again, not to walk away. The woman glanced at him briefly, a small smile. Not proud, not distant, just knowing. She hadn't come to change their lives. She had come to remind them how to live, and somehow, that had been enough.